For 6 weeks during 1972, all 17 rooms of this house in Los Angeles were transformed into an environmental art piece. Judy Chicago, Miriam Shapiro, and their students from the California Institute of the Arts used consciousness-raising sessions to search out and reveal the female experience and to produce theater pieces, which they wrote and performed. They explored these new feelings about themselves and about women's role in the home until they created, before the eyes of the public, the longings, fears, and dreams women have as they cook, sew, wash, and iron their lives away.
Scrambled eggs. Sunny side up.
And it's all nipples.
That's right. That's great. Look. See? It's drooping, and then it straightens itself out, and it becomes an egg. That's great. That's very good. Look at the curve.
Hey, Meryl, come here, look at all these eggs up here. Meryl, come in here. Huh? We had the right through there. Nylon. Oh, this is bad.
Oh, this is bad in here.
Linda, come here.
Linda.
Look at how big it is. Hey, Marilyn.
What do I call pink?
Marilyn. Hey, Marilyn, what do it remind you of?
That's what it looks like. It's supposed to be, I guess. Here.
Hey, Marilyn, look at this egg in the pan over here.
The pink. It's yellow.
Oh, it's real.
Waiting. Waiting for someone to come in. Waiting for someone to hold me. Waiting for someone to feed me. Waiting for someone to change my diaper. Waiting to crawl, to walk. Waiting to talk. Waiting to wear my frilly dress. Waiting to be a pretty girl. Waiting to sit on Daddy's lap. Waiting. Waiting. Waiting for my breasts to develop. Waiting to wear a bra. Waiting to menstruate. Waiting to read forbidden books. Waiting to go to a party. To be asked to dance close. Waiting to be beautiful. Waiting for the secret. Waiting for life to begin. Waiting. Waiting to get dressed up, to shave my legs. Waiting to be pretty. Waiting for him to notice me. Waiting for him to ask me to go steady. waiting to neck, to make out, waiting to go all the way, waiting to smoke, to drink, to stay out late, waiting to be a woman, waiting for my great love, waiting for my wedding day, waiting for my wedding night, waiting for sex, waiting for him to make the first move, waiting for him to give me pleasure, waiting for him to excite me, waiting for him to give me an orgasm, waiting for him to come home, to fill my time, waiting for my baby to come, waiting for my belly to swell, waiting for my breasts to fill with milk, waiting for the first contractions, waiting for the contractions to end, waiting for the head to emerge, waiting for the first scream, the afterbirth, waiting to hold my baby, waiting for my baby to suck my milk, waiting for my baby to stop crying, waiting for some time to myself, waiting to be beautiful again, waiting for my child to go to school, waiting for life to begin, waiting for him to tell me something interesting, to ask me how I feel, waiting for him to stop being crabby, reach for my hand, kiss me good morning, waiting for fulfillment, waiting for the children to marry, waiting for something to happen, waiting to grow wise, waiting for my body to break down, to get ugly, waiting for my flesh to sag, waiting for my breasts to shrivel up, waiting for a visit from my children, for letters, waiting for my husband to die, waiting to get sick, waiting for winter to end, waiting for a good bowel movement, waiting for the pain to go away, waiting for the struggle to end, waiting for release, waiting.
Basically, what Donald and I set out to do is to take the facilitators through the process we were going to ask them to go through with the participants in their groups, which was very challenging to do in the short time we had. In the facilitator training, a day was a week in the project. So on the first day of facilitator training, everybody did self-presentations about themselves and their work. Its purpose is to have everybody become acquainted with each other's work and get a sense of who is in there. Then that took a week in the actual process of the project.
How are these done? These are printed and collaged?
You're satisfied with?
Then we did reading discussions and discussions of the lectures.
That says, you know, can't we just move on? Do we have to keep reading this stuff? Why do these have to be on the syllabi? You know, I'm tired of it.
Dan Bell hooks, maybe there's reasons other than the language that is causing this resistance.
I've always wrestled being a white male. I saw him as a feminist and no one understood what I was talking about. And so I ended up feeling very disconnected from all the kind of traditional people that I was around.
I mean, when people say they don't get it, that can mean they don't want to get it.
The question often arises, why do research, especially from artists who have not done it before. And my favorite was when we were in Kentucky, Donald and I, and one of the students asked this question, why do research? We want to be original. And I laughed and I said, the fastest way not to be original is not to know what people before you have done. Then you are assured of reinventing the wheel.
I would say, what artists did we see in the panels or the lecture series, but particularly the 2 weekends, that addressed any of these issues raised here?
We moved then into looking for content, how to take the information that had been gathered through the research and the readings and the lecture and discussions into an informed way of approaching the subject matter. And that was when we did some amount of visualization. And then once people began to identify what content they might want to work with, then comes the art making stage and the process opens up. You know, because people come one day with one idea and then they hear other people's ideas and they go home and the next day they might have a whole different idea and, you know, then there might be people who want to work together to come up with plans.
They're all going to be juxtaposed, like Jesus' head on Buddha's body, and just incorporate all the religion and mix them together.
Are they all guys?
No, some of them are girls. Globalization of the religion is going to make religious figure change their original identity. You could have a brown Jesus or black Jesus.
Well, that's already happening. Are you working in the concept of the whole installation, of the whole group's installation? It either seems like it has to be the chapel of the future, or else it has to be that they found, again, these archaeological digs, where they found all these religious sections, parts of deities, and they put them all together in this bizarre way, thinking that this was what had happened.
How they interpreted what they found.
How they interpreted what they found.
I like that.
His name is Dexter Frankel. She's a very, very gifted exhibition designer, and she is going to become involved in the project as a sort of exhibition coordinator and facilitator, helping each group format their work in terms of how it will be exhibited, and then helping them actually install and exhibit ready work. Having Dextra involved, helping people bridge that gap and helping them actually think through at the beginning, for example, when they're starting to plan what they want to do, helping them actually have to think about doing it in a particular space and what that means and how do you actually think about presentation when you're still formulating your ideas.
UN warns that a 3-kilometer deep smog stretching across South Asia is modifying weather patterns, damaging agriculture, and endangering health. World Health Organization estimates that 5,500 children die each day from diseases linked to polluted food, air, and water. UN estimates that 25 million children in the developing world will lose one or both parents to AIDS by 2010. None of us has to be here, but we are. In the laundry room, we make things clean again. Smear, smudge, grime of the past becomes almost invisible, only a faint stain. Colors fade, threads go bare. Wash the body, wash the bones, the air, smoke from the air. The waters, until they too are clear.
most of it is based on intuition, I guess. But this part is sort of our first layer. We have 3 layers, and first layer is usually on the spot. We kind of have a general theme. In this case, sort of envisioning the future.
Going through intuition with one another.
Kind of a, free speech board. Yeah, we kind of take what's on our heads and kind of...
But you don't talk about it beforehand?
Not really.
No?
No, not really.
So you just take off of what he does, and he takes off of what you do?
Yeah.
Figure it out, but I see different aspects of the painting, and it's quite visible, very colorful. It's wonderful. I can kind of see where they're going with it, and kind of see where it's still growing.
I'm feeling kind of an uncertain future. I'm trying to figure out what they're conveying in their imagery, and their bleeding techniques, and their
The spray paint's
shapes.
kind of making it foggy, the whole picture foggy, Maybe related to your vision of the not so sure future. What do you think of the U.S. bombs? I think that's kind of like global imperialism.
I think
Here
so.
we come.
I think, yeah. Look out! Here comes capitalism.
Here comes globalization.
I think they need some dollar signs right next to those bombs.
By any means necessary.
Oh,
I really like it.
it's wonderful.
I like the spray painting effect a lot. It really is kind of making it like you can't really tell. It's like there it is. It's coming. But you're like, wait, what is it? You know?
Yeah. You have to look through it.
Yeah.
Well, it's there, isn't it? It's covered. No. But it's there.
It's painted over. That got really sad. Right.
On the board.
Yeah, we're just masking the areas.
Ah, I see. I've never seen him do it before.
He's doing your nose. He's not doing your nose.
Wow, hey, man, that's pretty cool, man.
Welcome everyone to Pomona. Who here is from Pomona? Well, as some of you may know, Pomona was named after the Roman goddess of fruit. But Pomona had another role as well. In Botticelli's painting, The Birth of Venus, she's depicted as helping give birth to love. Oh, yes. Tonight's performance is about the many ways that love is overshadowed by fear in today's world. War, poverty, greed, prejudice, violence, and terror are all the result. Where is the love? And what is love anyways? What would our lives look like? What would our world look like if we chose to come from a place of love more often than fear? No one can say what the future really holds, but this much we know.
Nació de ti, nació de mí,
de la esperanza. Nació de Dios para los dos, nació del alma. Sentir que en tus besos se anidaron en mí, igual que palomas mensajeras de luz. Saber que mis besos se quedaron en ti, siendo en tus labios la señal de la cruz. Nació de ti, nació de mí.
This is where we are today, folks. It appears that the only way we are connected to each other is through fear. The yellow, orange, and red ribbons of fear. Is this what we want? What would happen if we chose love instead of fear? Raphael, tell me, what would happen?
There would be no fighting.
No more violence! Breezy, drop the ribbon and tell me.
We should stop the hate and make more love.
Stop the hate! Make love! Sarah, drop the ribbon and speak to me. What would you do?
I'd stop all mental and self-abuse so everybody would get along.
Stop all mental and self-abuse so that we may all love and get along. Geraldine, speak to me.
Stop all wars and terrorism.
Stop all wars and terrorism. We think about love as candy hearts and chocolate, about sweethearts and romance, things that just make us feel good. Well, that's all fine and well, but love is much, much more. Love is the force that binds us all together across this plaza and across the world. We can't always see love's ties, but they are there. And it is through them that our lives and our destiny are interconnected and interdependent. It is love that gives us the courage to stand up for what is right. Boom. One.
Nació de Dios para los dos, nació del alma.
To share. To share what we have to others.
De la esperanza.
And to give.
we talk too much. Put your mouth full of words away and come with me to watch the lilies open in such a field, growing there like yachts, slowly steering their petals without nurses or clouds.
And the panel, whether postmodern and feminist theory were compatible. Well, of course, because postmodernism posits a certain distancing and all that stuff, which I thought was completely contrary to, feminist practice. And then I was in the back, and I raised my hand and I said something. Nobody recognized me, which was great. Because then I got a real read. The problem is when people recognize me, a lot of times they dissemble. So I said this, that I thought postmodernism and feminism were actually antithetical. And this woman says, from the front of this panel, she says, "Yes, dear, I know theory can be difficult." And then, of course, I was the recipient of some really stupid feminist theory. I mean, really stupid. Where, I'm like, how is it that perfectly ordinary people, and this is actually to Wolf's point, perfectly ordinary people could see, for example, the dinner party at the Birth Project and know that they celebrated women. And feminist theorists were sure that my images degraded women. I'm like, how could this happen? This is what we needed theory for? And so I've had a contentious relationship with theory. Nonetheless, I've understood, I've come to understand that, like it or not, theory informs now a lot of art critical discourse. And I thought a lot of things you said were very interesting, particularly the balance between understanding theory and being able to navigate an understanding of theory while still preserving your own authentic creative impulse, which I think is always a huge danger, because you can get so far outside of yourself that you can start seeing your work from the point of view of other people, and that's really dangerous because it can censor what you do. And so I think if you want to participate in the art dialogue, and this is something that is, like it or not, is the case of how things are in contemporary art, if you want to participate in the art dialogue, you do have to be conscious of and aware of some of the theories that underpin the visual experience now and our critical response to visual culture. On the other hand, I thought that the Seville article, I mean, like, why can't she fucking talk in English? That's why one of the reasons we assigned the Bell Hooks book, because Bell Hooks is one of the few feminist theorists who actually talks in language that is understandable and accessible. Also, actually, I have to tell you, theoretically, I'm opposed to the kind of language of the Seville book article, because just like I'm opposed to art making, teaching artists in university art education to talk in tongues, that is, make art that nobody can understand, I'm opposed to theory that talks in tongues. I think there's no particular reason why theory cannot be clear. And Arthur Danto, by the way, the reason we assigned him, he's not an artist, he's a philosopher. He's very, very famous.
He was an artist. It says on the back of the book he used to be an artist.
If he was, it was a really long time ago. So long ago that everybody but Arthur forgot it.
It says,
really?
Dante.
It really struck me when reading the article on Jenny Saville. I guess Jenny Saville could have said a lot more and could have been taken less advantage of, as far as like the photograph with her in front of her work. If she had been more informed about feminist theory and the works that have come before, like Joe Spence, and she could have, they were saying she could have not have been taken advantage of, centered that way, and used in that way, if she had been more aware. And I think that's really important. You have to understand the history of what's going on, how people criticize work, how, I guess, the bad criticism, you have to understand why, like certain male critics judge female artwork a certain way, and understand that in order to take advantage of that, or to not be taken advantage of. And I think, I don't know, like the other day, I guess, my advisor was telling me about research and how you never do math in a bubble. You never should do math in a bubble, some people do, but that work usually is ignored or, like pushed aside because it isn't written in the language that everybody else in the public knows. And so if you don't appeal to what people know first, then your work is completely lost to the public a lot of times. And I think it's really important to put your work in the language. And once it's in that language and people have a good idea and an understanding of what you're trying to say, what you're trying to do, then introduce your own message. And I guess all the work that I've done so far has been for myself. And so I didn't really think about like what the public will think of my art, and it scared the crap out of me to think about how people would react to my art, especially after reading Beyond the Flower and hearing and realizing that there's going to be a lot of irrational criticism out there, that you're just not going to be able to respond to all of those people, and you just, I don't know.
Well, different people are at different places in their development in the group. And for people who are just starting out, some of this is very, very far away from you. But for those of you who have already started showing, or who are about to show, or about to get out into the art world, or have begun to do that, all of this is at play on you, whether you're aware of it or not. And artists are a lot like women were before the feminist movement. Artists are unbelievably unconscious. And a lot of artists get defeated because they are so unconscious. They get a bad review and they think it's maybe their work isn't any good. They never crosses their mind that the reviewer might just be a chauvinist pig, or a homophobe, or bringing something to bear in terms of what they're promoting in art that has nothing to do with you. So this is at work all the time, all of this. So you can decide if you want to become conscious or you want to stay asleep. But if you stay asleep, you're guaranteed to fail or to operate in such a little, tiny, narrow space where you do your work for your own personal satisfaction, and that's that. And if that's enough for you, it's fine. But if you want to make your way in the world as an artist, then you have to awaken. So how about enough of this, Well,
Black is ultimate reality. It is the transcendence of all form. It burns bright as Mother Kali, the devourer of fires. The naked black body is absolute, void of physical ornaments, above the illusions of false consciousness. It cannot be hidden by the domestic clothing of ignorance. Out from the foamy seas. The quantum of time freezes in its own reflection when the tongue of the ancient goddess tastes its salty waters and her lips turn to blood. She still enjoys the flavor of the liberated sea, and her nape is blacker than the space through God's eye. The absence of color holds the rhythm of the cosmos. The ancients danced in their pure nude skins and played with the universe. Black is the color of the emptied womb where the ego lays unconscious. It is the milk of the divine mother from the center of the universe. Black can roam free without fear of its nakedness, for black is fuller than virtue. The black soul is wrapped in blankets as it worships, as a young child suckles to its mother, thinking that it can overflow with the essence of the Nile, with only the touch of a mother who holds her in her arms as she would God. Red is the color of passion, the creator's ink on feathered pen. It burns bright as Ma Durga, the mother of gods. The red soul is fulfilled, adorned with jewels and rubies. Above the statues of ignorance, it holds the spear that defends social justice. Out from her return to Jupiter, the constellations adore their matriarch, as beautiful as the timid sea that roar with red fire when prompted. Her breasts are filled with the life divine. The cornucopia of colors hold the stirring of mankind. She herself danced in her pure nude skin to honor the world. Red is the color of feminine abundance, where all egos are refined. It is the gold gift to the heavens, the first opening that created the universe. Red is the color of passion, the life force that makes life worth living. The red soul lights the pathway to goodness. It banishes demons with metaphysical rays. It is the words of a young poet who writes by the dawn of each day to reconnect with the womb of his goddess.
I am incensed over the U.S. invasion of Iraq. I am incensed over the tens of thousands of Iraqi civilian deaths and dismemberments. I am incensed over the destruction of an entire country's infrastructure, the devastation we have wrought with no intention to amend. I am incensed over the accompanying murder, torture, humiliation, and unlawful detention of terrorist suspects. I am incensed over our country's loss of dignity and credibility around the world because of those atrocities. I am incensed at the billions and billions of dollars squandered in this, what is to be endless war on terror, and which in actuality is a war on the very ideals that once made older generations proud to be American. Adherence to the humaneness of the Genevan Convention, fighting aggression and injustice rather than being the aggressor and transgressor, and seeking to build rather than to destroy. I'm incensed over the Bush administration's outright lying and manipulation of intelligence data in order to convince Congress and the American people that Saddam Hussein was linked to 9/11, had weapons of mass destruction and the immediate ability and intent to use them, all as a ruse to engage this country in a Bush family vendetta and to feed corporate greed for oil, power, and money. I am sickened over the gullibility and intellectual and moral laziness evidenced by Congress and the American people as they were led by the nose and by vengeance to war. I am incensed over the fact that hundreds of thousands of people and animals were left to die in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. I am incensed that thousands of Americans, mostly African Americans, remain refugees in their own country with little hope of returning home. I am incensed that our federal government chooses to spend massive sums of money on death and destruction of war without end, money that could have prepared and protected New Orleans from flooding, that could better educate children and improve primary health care. I am incensed that those who took us to war do not feel the personal impact of their war, that their families are safe while tens of thousands of other Americans have lost husbands, wives, children, and grandchildren. I am incensed that those who failed to act when it was clear Katrina would devastate coastal Louisiana and Mississippi do not suffer the consequences of their inaction and disregard. I am incensed by the cynicism and arrogance that permeates the White House, Congress, and corporate lobbyists who buy their favors and our future. I am an American, and I am angry, ashamed, and heartsick.